Hey, are you a fan of playing balanced decks in ground and space with the ability to battle into either theater? How about being able to get back key cards from your lost pile after you lose them to a drain or in battle? Are you including a couple key bullet cards to help you for specific matchups? Are you okay with not playing the most iconic villain of Star Wars, Darth Vader? These are all great reasons for you to play Carbon Chamber Testing, or CCT for short. Recent V-sets have changed some of the tactics for CCT, so I'm making an updated video. Carbon Chamber Testing, and my favorite decoration, relies on you moving a frozen captive to Jada's Pound's audience chamber and transferring that frozen captive to IG-88V, your deck engine. Then you want to hold the audience chamber. From there you can obtain the benefits of Scum and Villainy, which can be pulled with my favorite decoration, and Despair V to deploy space or contest ground. While the damage output in the control phase typically isn't that high, the retrieval from the objective, and with Scum and Villainy and the ability to search for cards with IG-88V to counter your opponent and contest their battlegrounds in either theater, gives the deck a winning combination. Immunity to attrition less than 4 for aliens, independent starships, has also come in handy enough times to be a perk for the deck as well. Carbon Chamber Testing allows you to deploy 4 cards at the start of the table. First, you're going to want to deploy the 2/1 Sight in the Cloud City Carbonite Chamber, and with it goes the Carbonite Chamber Console V, which gives you an additional force during your opponent's turn, and can pull He's All Yours Bounty Hunter V, a helpful card. In addition, you're going to start the Cloud City Security Tower V, a 2/0 Sight, and there you're going to want to deploy your Jabba's Prize, which counts as one of your 60 cards in your deck. Unfortunately, the Jabba's Prize will not stay on table for long, because it will nearly in almost every case be replaced by the Mithril, the frozen dude from The Mandalorian in the first episode. Fortunately, he eliminates your ability to play Stunning Leader at his location. And then he even flips back if your opponent is able to free him at some point, where he'll be able to taunt you for the remainder of game because you weren't able to hold your sights. You will then start any methods necessary, non-V, as you're starting in row. One of the few decks using this card. You can then pull Despair V from the Security Tower V's text. Despair V is a key helper card that grants +3 power in all battles as long as Scum and Villainy is at the same site as Jabba's Prize or the Mithril. In addition, should your frozen captive leave the table, your objective does not go out of play, giving the deck some additional resiliency. You will also pull with any methods necessary. Tatooine Jabba's Palace Prison for an additional activation after the turn 1. And you're going to want to take Boba Fett V and Boba Fett's Blaster Rifle V. Optionally, you could take Slave 1, Symbol of Fear. This deck doesn't have it, but you could, and a lot of players like pulling that to have in their opening hand. Turn 1 and 2 look very similar for most CCT builds. Some decks activate only one force initially to pull He's All Yours Bounty Hunter as one of their first actions. This will allow Boba Fett to move for free, including his relocation later in the move phase. Next, activate all your force and deploy Boba Fett to the security tower with his blaster. Next, deploy Jabba's Palace's audience chamber using your objective's text. And again, don't forget to deploy that prison from hand for an additional activation. During your move phase, have Boba Fett escort your frozen captive and move him to the audience chamber using Boba Fett's Blaster Rifle V's text, which is 2 force, or free if you used He's All Yours Bounty Hunter on Boba Fett that turn. Boba Fett then moves to the audience chamber, flipping your objective. Boba Fett can sometimes be vulnerable during turn 1 from your opponent's attacks. I'll talk about that later with some tricks. Let's assume he makes it to turn 2, which isn't an unreasonable assumption. Turn 2, you then can deploy Scum and Villainy from your reserve deck using your objective, which is now flipped. Make note of what's in there in the reserve deck. You're looking to make sure that both Darrow and IG-88V are in there. Then use Jabba's Palace's audience chamber to deploy, to the surprise of no one who plays Star Wars CCG, but maybe to the surprise of a new and returning player, a Jawa. Darrow V allows you to search your reserve deck for any droid, and he will get you IG-88V, who is going to be your deck engine. In your move phase, transfer the frozen captive to IG-88V, and from there he will allow you to search your force pile every turn and take any card you find there in the hand. If you somehow luck into IG-88V or Darrow in your hand, Proxima is often the next best choice, because she allows you to peek at the top 3 cards of your reserve deck during any control phase and choose an alien if one is there to put in your hand. She also adds a Battle Destiny with 2 aliens at her site. So there, your basic setup's done. From here, you're looking to reinforce the audience chamber if you're wary of an attack, find your system and deploy a fleet to hold it, or counterattack your opponent with your cast of aliens. At any time for activation here, deploy Jabba's Palace Sail Barge or Jabba's Sail Barge Passenger Deck, or use Twi'lek Advisor B to deploy it from Reserve Deck. In similar vein, if you find Nal Hutta or find Jabba's Haven, you'll be able to get Nal Hutta to deploy. You'll be able to use Jabba's Haven to deploy Nal Hutta from Reserve Deck for some additional activation as well. Some players like to play Wipe Them Out, all of them, for additional activation during opponent's turn and a better card finding experience for IG-8 on opponent's turn as well. You're also looking for Imperial Artillery for an extra force loss per turn and to cycle 7s back into your deck, although many players instead prefer You'll Be Dead as an effect that more consistently pings for 1 force. You don't have to play interrupts over and over. The deck build typically revolves around similar 40 cards or so, which we're talking about your beefy alien characters such as Prince Sizor, Jango Fett, your Jabba of choice, Mara Jade with lightsaber, Lady Proxima. Also looking for a pretty balanced space package here. We're talking about independent starships, Guri with Stinger, Zuckuss the Mist Hunter, Ellison Hinthrow. But IG-88V allows for some specific customization of the last 20 cards or so to deal with the top deck list of the day, since you can search your force pile every turn for cards that you really need. Let's talk some strategy now. Boba Fett is sometimes vulnerable turn 1 as he sits alone at the audience chamber. Your opponent can sometimes buster a Jedi and a lightsaber, so you'll need to be prepared with a trick or two in your deck to deal with this. Stunning Leader was a very popular answer, but the Mithril now prevents its use. In its place, Design printed He's No Good to Me Dead, which directly cancels the battle once per game, and it's the best play as that function is immune to sense. Other cards you can think about are Projective Telepathy, which usually works well and can be a helpful card late game as the force gets low for both players. Less reliable, but to consider any methods necessary, V. Greedo, for example, if you actually want to battle, something like Hidden Weapons if you want to try your luck with Destiny draws, if your other tricks fall through as well. Don't forget, if you're unlucky or you miss a pull, you can use Carbonite Chamber Console to get He's All Yours Bounty Hunter V for Destiny if unable to otherwise. Typically, delaying the battle for a turn can find you enough backup, and that works well enough. Against heavy mains, they'll sometimes stack the audience chamber for a tough fight. Consider running the 1996 combo that hasn't disappeared yet, Disarm with Dr. Evazan from Premiere, to help get rid of pesky characters by operating on your opponent's turn. Cards like Ceasefire or Ifant Mon can help your characters around who don't have a ton of forfeit, and weapons and high battle destinies for your low forfeit aliens can often be overwhelming, so these tricks help a lot. You might also want to find Cad Bane, for example, for along with Concussion Rifle, who can cancel attacks and often add a ballasting with Jabba, or maybe even Aura Sing with Blaster Rifle to help get those high defense value, high immunity characters off the table. Don't forget, you can even, during your move phase, swap the captive from Boba to IG-88V, use the force pile for search of IG-88V, and then switch the captive back to Boba to threaten to use He's No Good to Me Dead to cancel a battle if you are worried and you haven't used the card's text as of yet. How much space you should run is a key question for the deck. With Gurian Ship, maybe Slave 1, Zuckuss the Mist Hunter, Ellison Hinthrow, Woof V, Ponda Baba V, there's a fearsome package to be built. The issue is typically CCT is only threatening a drain of 1 space, so overcommitting 2 space in terms of deploy or even deck slots can be killer versus an all-ground deck, for example. How much you will run, how much space you will run is often dependent on what the meta looks like and how you personally like to play. That said, if there's a lot of light side space decks being run, such as Diplo, No Idea, Yavin 4 base operations, you can even consider running Dengar and Punishing 1, or dropping Slave 1, including the Mess and Martinet to kick up your opponents out of space. By the way, don't forget your Immunity Lesson 4 applies to Dengar and Zuckuss' ships from the objective. On the other end of the spectrum, if you want to save deck slots, independent starship pods do not suspend scum and villainy, so Tatooine Maul and the Sith Infiltrator can be a concise space package if you want to load up on ground. Lastly, and this is what makes the deck enjoyable, since IG-8V allows you to find any card in your force pile, you can put in some interesting tech against decks you see often. See a lot of BB-8 or 3PO, run some Restraining Bolts or Luxor droids. Lots of Jedi coming to attack you, how about Disarmed or Dr. Eve from Premiere and Ceasefire. Running to a lot of space decks, add in Jabba's Palace Lower Passages and Gallad for extra ground drains, and an extra battleground for resistance. Need You'll Be Dead or Key Effect Quicker? Play Surface Defense speed. You don't like the low distance from aliens? Scrap You'll Be Dead and throw in some Imperial Artilleries. Need more late game damage? Throw in limited resources. Your opponent playing a lot of evasion? Put in Blaster controls and they're still coming through. Not only does IG-8V allow you to find the cards you need for a specific matchup, or play one copy of that pet card you've grown fond of, but CCT's retrieval ability typically allows you to get cards back to find and play once more. Overall, the deck is very balanced on both land and ground, and typically has enough resiliency to get you to late game with a chance to win. The deck can sometimes be frustrating when you activate your key cards early and they're not in reserve deck, when you're attempting to search for them. Audience Chamber turn 1 from CCT, Darrow V from the Audience Chamber, or IG-8V from Darrow on turn 2. So ensure you have a backup plan for that eventuality. Also, if you're playing live, ensure you have nice sleeves, because you'll be shuffling your deck often. Knowing your deck list and practice with this deck is a must, as it affords you the ability to search your reserve deck or force pile, and therefore know what cards would reside in the other pile, and find that key card you need at the right time, if you have memorized your deck list. With some practice, you'll be competitive in most games with a fairly interactive deck.